Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking with Apes podcast. Today, we are here with episode 15 of our podcast. We will be discussing a topic today that is quite serious, a topic involving Frontex, the ghost police of the EU. Now, what is Frontex? Frontex is actually a European agency which acts like a sort of police force to control the borders and push refugees, migrants away. So if a country has a large influx in migration, they can call Frontex and ask for help, ask to close the borders. Now, Europe, of course, always prizes themselves as a community with great dignity and that protects human rights. And today we want to look at how Frontex fits into that image, if they fit into that image at all, because they have been accused of using excessive force several times now.
Amongst other human rights violations, yes.
Tom, what is a European agency, and how did Frontex obtain that title?
It obtained that title because there was a need for such a thing, as the European member states agreed on the Schengen area to remove internal borders. There was, of course, the concern of some of those countries in the middle of the Schengen area that the external border had thus to be protected together as well, or to be managed together would be a better word, because protected already comes with the idea that there is a risk or a danger coming for your border.
But Frontex was started in 2005, yes. So it wasn't really a direct result of
Not immediately, no. It came later. And it was the coordination. It was supposed to smoothen the coordination between the various member states. So how it originally worked was, if there was a big influx of, let's say, migrants, like we saw in 2015, then Frontex would pull border agents from other countries, let's say from Belgium and the Netherlands and France, etc. And it would send them to Greece and Italy to help the Greeks and the Italians deal with whatever they wanted to deal with. And that was basically its job, to be the middleman in that entire scenario. And it's an agent. It was an agency like any other. It's like the same way where you imagine a dusty office where you get like papers or stamps on papers. Like they're bureaucrats in the most original basic version.
In their base form, that's what they are. They still are at heart. Basically, they just mutated into something much more monstrous, let's say.
Like Kenan, as someone who grew up in Syria and who has seen people leave that country for a number of years, like, would you say that Frontex is a topic that is talked about in
I've literally never heard about Frontex until the magazine, the German show you showed me.
So it's not really something that you were afraid of crossing the Mediterranean?
No, I thought it was just border control, general border control. But it's worth noting that most of the egregious Frontex stories we've heard about are happening on the coast of North Africa, between the Libyan and the Italian borders on the sea. And that's not the path really I was into. I came from Greece. And at the time, within the the Turkish-Greek border situation, it was much more, I don't know, like I was actually, like, I was rescued by an Italian mission, I think. That Italian mission could have been coordinated by Frontex, for all I know.
So they also coordinate those kinds of missions?
I think so. That's literally their job.
They're responsible for both water, land, and air management of the border.
Indeed. And at the time, when the 2015 migration crisis, quote unquote, let's call it, was happening, there was this whole sentiment, because we know in the European Union and because of Angela Merkel, there was pressure on Frontex, I think, to rescue people from death. And that's what
Yeah,
happened
like
to me.
the image of that little boy and the shore.
Exactly, you remember
etc.
those days.
Yes.
So they weren't gonna leave people to die in the sea. And that's Frontex. That's 2015 Frontex.
Yeah, so the official role of Frontex is to make migration go smoothly.
Yes.
And
It's not even like, because in the beginning we said it's for protecting or like closing the borders. That's not really their job. Their job is to coordinate sending technical support and manpower to people who need it, for member states who need it when it comes to managing immigration flow. That's their official wording.
I mean, yeah, but
Yeah. No, but
To be honest,
if,
their
if we're
main-
talking about their origin, that's
since
their
the
origin.
since the position of the European Union and it's the leaders of its member states is to limit migration
Yes.
and to have closed borders, Frontex is the agency responsible for doing the bidding, being the executive agency of
Exactly.
that, or being
That's
the
what
agency of
Frontex
that
are
executive.
kind of an executive
control.
agency. They're not really into making politics. It's not their job to decide if we're accepting refugees, if we're accepting migrants, or are we closing borders.
yeah, no, of course not.
And that's why in 2015 we didn't really hear about Frontex, because at the time the European narrative was everybody's welcome.
They were
kinda.
also a lot smaller
I mean, that was
at the time.
Merkel's
That was
narrative.
Merkel, but
It wasn't.
yeah,
all of Europe, far from-
She was, for all intents and purposes, the European Union for a while.
They were also a lot smaller. I mean, if we look at this episode of the podcast was inspired by ZDF Magazine Royal, like the German
Yeah,
John
ZDF
Oliver
Royale.
Royal. I'm sorry for my bad German accent or lack thereof. But if we TLDR pointed it out beautifully, the YouTube channel. Like in 2014, they had 100 billion euros. No, 100 million euros.
Something like that.
In 2017, that already like more than doubled to 280.
Yeah, their
euros.
budget exploded.
Yeah, and now in 2020, it's 400. That is incredible, especially if you compare it to, let's say, Europol, which has 150.
I think their projections already for by 2027, they want more than 2
Yes,
billion.
they wanted.
But maybe that's also a good thing to point out, because as the narrative changes from we want to save people from drowning to more and more we want to limit migration as much as possible, the budget goes up. So in a way, it seems like keeping people out is more expensive than helping people, at least in that first.
From a border management
Yes.
point of view, yes, it is more, especially when your idea of closing the border includes using advanced weapons, military drones.
Yeah, because like
that's it.
what we're seeing is if you want to limit migration, you can't really do it by boat because there's rules. If you are
Yes.
on international waters, you see a boat
by decree
drowning
of the United Nations, you
Exactly.
are forced, and so Frontex is to
help the people.
help those people.
Yes.
and
There
take
has
them on
been
board
cases
and
though of Frontex ignoring people and
pushing them back.
Exactly, and they kind of got in trouble for that because
Also,
they
one
used a technique where
One incident which I think we should really mention, where they basically looped around the boat and started to
Make waves,
and
yeah.
pull up with their ship to make waves to push
them back
the
to
rubber
Turkey.
boat back.
yeah, but this is apparently a well-known
Yeah.
technique that is
Yes.
used regularly. But this got out and it got some attention. So now they are looking into ways of using, like doing of limiting migration without using boats to do it. And so they're thinking of using drones, using all kinds of things, even using the what are they called again? The Heißluftballon. I only know the term.
balloons.
Not
Zeppelins.
yeah.
Zeppelins,
There was talks
zeppelins.
about a zeppelin and,
Yeah,
and
well,
stuff
that
like
doesn't
that.
surprise me.
So they are looking for ways of controlling the seas from the sky, so they are not bound by the rules of sea travel.
Yeah.
And that's of course expensive. Like,
well, doing anything more than, I mean, if you're managing migration in, and you're like saying stamping papers or dealing with documents, that is one thing. If you also have to at the same time, maintain a fence or maintain a patrol, and that of course always includes more resources and requires more people, etc., etc. So in and of itself, and then to avoid indeed international law, they gather high-tech supplies, and thus the budget goes up even more.
And what's the motivation for Frontex to care about this? Why do they have this idea of we need to dodge international law so we can be as shitty as we can? Is this something that is being pushed by the border countries like the Balkans, by Greece?
Well, we know Italy and Greece are not unrightfully so of the mindset we were abandoned during the migrant crisis and we have to deal with all the stuff, but it's just as much your border in the Schengen area, when it comes to Belgium, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, like it makes sense that the Italians and the Greeks don't want to deal with everything on their own. That seems totally fair. Of course, what's Frontex motivation for doing pushbacks? Well, probably they got told to do pushbacks, or at least insinuated. The agency is not going to act fully of its own, and if they would, and it would not be in line with what the Commission or the European Union wanted, then they would probably be.
That's what I was thinking too.
The reins would have been reined in, but instead they're given more and more resources.
Indeed.
So.
And what doesn't make sense in this situation is like that show that was the catalyst for this episode. They did some investigation and they found that Frontex has been leading with weapon lobbyists.
I mean, they worked together with a group called Frag den Staat that actually did the most of the investigation, just to give the right credit here.
Right, sorry. Mm-hmm. And we see that Frontex on its own is meeting with weapon manufacturers, with weapon lobbyists, with Saudi princes, with some like horrible people, and they were actually questioned by, I don't know what governing body did actually question them, but it was another governing body in the European Union, and they promised to deliver logs of all of their lobbying meetings
to Parliament. They were supposed to do that to Parliament.
Exactly,
they did not,
and that's what I mean by I'm not seeing here them like you would. It seems like they're on the surface they are in conflict with the European Parliament itself, but there is something happening.
No, because Europe is happy that they're not told about it, because then they don't have to deal with it. Like, it's not really, I mean...
In that sense, the European Parliament actually functions like a parliament should. Part of it is, of course, questioning what is happening. I mean, they're working with the majority of that the Commission has. The Commission is the government of the EU, kind of. And they're working within that majority. So of course there is not a complete opposition by Parliament, but parts of Parliament, like let's say the left in the European Parliament, that is their name, the left in the European Parliament. I'm
sorry.
It questions them and their MEPs.
Indeed.
Their parliamentarians.
It's a parliament that is acting like a parliament with different people with different agendas within the parliament.
Yes.
Indeed, I see. And that's why there is this idea of somebody is actually trying to put Frontex under scrutiny, and some other parts of Parliament are probably...
Yes.
Go ahead.
And NGO, civil society, which has been very active during the migration peak that we had in 2015, are also, of course, always investigating the thousands and thousands and thousands of papers that come out of the EU or that...
So going back to the weapons lobbying thing, so Frontex, from what we see from the change from 26, from a dusty office of, as you described them, wannabe sheriffs, to 2015 when they had much larger budget, but they were still, there was a lot of spotlight on the immigration things going on within the European borders. So they were kind of still in that organizational middleman.
Nobody knew them yet as well within the
Exactly.
EU. Like European agencies don't get the most attention.
Exactly. They just it's like, hey Greece, hey Italy, I need some help. I need some soldiers. I need some organizational powers. I need manpower basically, and that's what's their job. today in 2021, we're talking about, as they describe themselves too, very proudly, the fastest growing European agency.
Yes.
We're talking about weapon deals. We're talking about air drones. We're talking about.
I mean, to make one more comment on the weapons lobbyist thing, they spent 94,000 euros on a dinner with the weapons lobby and the Saudi princess, and they are. This is the remarkable thing for a European agency, maybe. They are buying their own equipment now. They are hiring their own people. Before they had to rely on the member states, and they pulled together from that. Now they're skipping that middleman. They're making themselves the end product and turn and
that's why I was so like I made a mistake in the beginning, like before the podcast. I was like, why is the European Union outsourcing security to a private company?
Yeah,
because they're kind of acting like one. They're acting with their own interests, with their own agendas.
They're acting as an institution. They're acting as.
But I mean, aren't they just acting in a way that's efficient for what their task is to limit immigration?
Sure. And is it that efficient though? It seems to be also a bit over-bloated. Like, do you need all of these weapons to push back immigrants?
But that's the interesting part, which, for example, the TLDR people also made. Is Frontex trying to be a border agency, or is it slowly teaming into and growing into a proto-European army, because it is becoming heavily militarized? It is.
Yeah, the weapon deals and stuff. It seems like that's what they're going for. It seems like they're trying to become a mini army, and I'm not sure if it's really. Because limiting immigration on this scale with that much coast area, etc., to cover, it's never really going to work. So I think maybe it's also to scare people off.
Obviously, yeah, that has always been one of the main tactics: scare, discourage. But there might be a grain. It might be indeed the case that this is a way for some politicians that are pro-European military to grow set military in a way that just goes around all the usual red tape and difficult negotiations that come with things. If the EU has its own, if the European Commission and Parliament has its own army or heavily militarized police force, then at some point, depending on how big it grows, you have a tipping point, and the EU can say to a member state, no, you listen to us, or
Frontex
lets everybody in.
Which is, Frontex is very legally gray area. That's their their situation right now. Because again, like, let's go back to their human rights violations on the coasts of the European borders. It's really horrible. And let's say you are one person who has been. One of the things they do. This is one we didn't mention yet. On the Libyan-Italian borders, what they would do is, you made it, Frontex will literally try to push you back to Libya as much as possible. And they actually paid a visit to the Libyan coast.
Yes.
And the first people they found with weapons, they were like, here's some military boats, here's some speedboats, here's some
the rebels in charge in the area.
Exactly.
They bought them speedboats and machine guns.
You handle rescues. Give us.
You're now the Libyan Coast Guard.
Yeah, they kind of installed a semi-official Libyan Coast Guard, so they wouldn't have to call the Greek or Italian Coast Guard.
And these people are literally war criminals.
Yes, because the thing is, even if you use drones, if you see people on sea and you're not in a boat, so you can't rescue them, you still have to call a Coast Guard. You have to report that there's people. They have to do something. So and since they don't want to call the European Coast Guard,
because they would have to take them back to Europe.
Exactly, they call this newly installed Libyan Coast Guard,
and they don't pick up, and it's like, oops, that's what we could do.
Yes,
and
it has to be pointed out that's an example of good old imperialism, like going to the other side of the Mediterranean and then setting up a pseudo institution of a Coast Guard in
It's such a
another
classic
people's
story.
country
Such
Yeah.
a classic story.
and being like, we recognize you as that institution, as that governing
Giving
body.
them also weapons without
Yes.
any regard to what that might cause in that country.
And they call this like their partnership.
Yes, I mean they're not selfish, you know. They're working together. They're
Yeah,
expanding.
exactly.
They're a
International
real
cooperation.
Yeah.
Borders are a 2-point way. Obviously, people wouldn't be like fleeing away. You could just send them back. That's normal.
Yeah.
So, if you're one of those people who had their human rights violated by Frontex, what can you do?
Well, first and
Well,
foremost,
we watched a video before about it's called the complaints mechanism of Frontex. You can find it on their official YouTube channel. It was made in 2020, but yeah, it's very very up to date with a lot of cute little graphics of police officers sending people away for illegal reasons, and then you get in the end like a description of how you can form a complaint in case this happened to you, because of course Frontex can't just work on this never happening. No, but you can form a complaint. So imagine you are picked up by one of those Libyan rebels because one time they did show up and they didn't just ignore the phone. Well, in that case, if you're not happy about the situation, you can either send a letter and they offer you their address. So you can write a little letter, give it to, I don't
accept
know.
all languages, by the way.
Yeah, they do accept all languages. They're super fucking exclusive, super fucking
Inclusive.
like inclusive. That's what I said.
I don't know. I've heard exclusive. I'm just used to the word exclusive nowadays.
Well, they're inclusive. They're super fucking woke, and they will read your letter and they will answer you. Even though you don't have an address, they will totally answer you. You can also go to their website with your fancy little smartphone that you brought with you on the trip, obviously.
Imagine owning a smartphone and needing to be an immigrant. Like, what's these people deals?
Yes, so you can send a complaint there, or you can even use your laptop or your
go to the
gaming
website and
PC
register a
that you
complaint.
took on the little boat to register.
And they
a complaint.
will register your complaint, and they will do an investigation, an internal investigation.
make sure your personal information will not be shared with third parties.
Oh, yes.
But you do have to provide it, it seems.
Yes. You would have to, but if you wish it to be anonymous, you have to denote
Fun
so.
fact, the Frontex agency will also be responsible from 2022 onward for the like united system of travel information for the EU,
Oh my
which
God.
every foreign person has to apply
Yeah,
to and be
all-
checked against.
All of the fingerprints, all of the central database. That's actually something I had to do when I crossed the borders, when I first came here.
Lovely. Okay, so either you send a letter, you send a little text message, or you write an email to Frontex. All of those three options are obviously the first thing you would think about when your human rights have been violated and you're now a sex slave working in Libya to survive. But okay, so aside, you can
Aside from
also contact the highest court in Europe, because Frontex is a European agency. So if they do something wrong, you have to go all the way up and basically file a lawsuit in the European court.
Exactly.
So
Which you can do with your lawyer that obviously went with you on the boat, because, you know, who doesn't bring their lawyer?
and which is super easy because the EU has not signed the European Convention on Human Rights, which is not by the EU, by the way. This is one of those weird Council of Europe things. But
Yes.
so yes, you go to the basically constitutional court of the European Union and file a complaint.
And I mean, most of
Easy
so
peasy.
obviously this doesn't happen. And most of the people that are picked up by the Libyan Coast Guard, if we can call it that, since those are, you know, rebel groups, mafia, like it's a very shady organization. Most of them end up in human traffic, all kinds of, you know, fucked up situations.
When it comes to the gray legal areas, it's not only within the European Union of the future of a European military. We're also talking about even if you're a victim of them, and even if you manage to survive, and even if you manage to contact somebody with complaints, you have to go to the highest European court.
Yeah, imagine someone like makes a scratch on your car and you have to go
To the Supreme that you
Court.
violated my human rights.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Exactly.
Even just a normal homicide charge is difficult at that level. But I mean, this is, and then even if you get there, imagine you are the person that indeed found a human rights lawyer that could drag this case before the court. Then you are faced with the following problem. The Frontex says, we are a European agency. We cannot be held accountable. Go to the member states. They are the base of power of the EU decision-making process. And the member states say, well, we don't do it. Frontex does it because Frontex is our executive agency. And you are fucked.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, it's this feedback loop of negative bullshit blame. Frontex is just the hand. It just was following orders.
And why should you care about this even if you're not a refugee or a migrant trying to come? Because this screws with the entire checks and balances system of the division of power between the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branch. Parliament cannot check Frontex properly, and the judicial branch cannot hold it accountable. So
what Tom is saying that if this is not only
Democracy.
affecting refugees and immigrants on the scary part of the borders, this is only affecting you. This is also affecting all of democracy. This is also affecting the whole way the European Union works.
Mhm.
So this is not just these refugees again problem.
yes, although, that shouldn't be your response
It
to
shouldn't.
talking about refugee problems anyway. Oh no, those refugees again.
I mean, it's the ugly truth is there is always refugees. There is always war.
Yes.
There is always people trying to leave a hostile area. This didn't start happening in 2015, and it didn't end up happening in 2016.
Exactly. And you should also never assume that you will never be a refugee, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Because,
So maybe
politics.
if we're gonna go a bit more abstract, just like this is not just a technical problem. This is another proof that this fucking idea of isolationism. Just look at the UK. Look at the UK begging people to come back because they need drivers. They need truck drivers.
People to pluck fruit and things on the field and
And you have to
get
understand
vegetables
that
out of the ground.
these people aren't here to nobody would leave their home if they didn't absolutely need to leave their home.
Yeah, it basically comes down to this very unrealistic also view that still dominates politics. Like, we need to keep them out. They're responsible for, like in the case of the UK, a big part of your most labor intense part of the economy.
Also in Belgium, no? The Turkish diaspora, the
Belgium,
Moroccan.
France, Spain, and especially those countries with significant agricultural elements still.
Yes. Now, Frontex, to get back to Frontex, because there's a working group now, the Frontex Scrutiny Working Group, installed in the European Parliament. And they are also there to investigate and expose and research what Frontex is doing, if it's right what they're doing, etc. How do we feel about them?
I've just learned about them. I imagine it's another NGO within the European Union or something, or
No, it's like a part of Parliament.
of Parliament.
So
Like
how they put a commission for everything?
Yeah.
Well, this is like that, but it's called a working group.
Yes.
I mean, at least it's not Frontex itself trying to police itself.
No, but I have some general conclusions from the first thing here.
Go ahead, Tom.
Just go ahead.
So they did a fact-finding mission first, of course. The working group concludes that several reliable actors such as national and international human rights bodies and organizations consistently reported about fundamental rights violations at the border in a number of member states, but that Frontex generally disregarded these reports. The working group did not find conclusive evidence on the direct performance of pushbacks and collective expulsions by Frontex in the serious incident cases that could be examined by the working group. What are some else? It found deficiencies in Frontex's mechanism to monitor, report, and assess fundamental rights situations and developments, and makes concrete recommendations for improvement. It is concerned about the lack of cooperation of the executive director to ensure compliance with some of the provisions of the EBCG regulation. I have no idea what that stands for. There are too many acronyms in the EU. And it takes the position that the management board should have played a much more proactive role. So it basically...
The management board of Frontex.
Frontex, yes. It highlights the responsibility of the member states and the Commission outside their role in the management board as well. They should step up their involvement and actions to ensure that Frontex's support of border surveillance goes hand in hand with adequately preventing and combating fundamental rights violations.
Strong words.
Yes, well, that's typical EU jargon for you.
Honestly, I bet most of the people who are listening to the podcast have just zoned out in the last 15 seconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well... I'm sorry for that little summary, but it's basically, yes, they found some stuff, they published a report, and now...
And the stuff they found is like, yes, they're doing bad shit.
Yes.
Now what?
There is mistakes. Congratulations.
No, but I do think this is always a part of like the process. You have to...
Yes, but...
You have to basically prove the guilt. And we know Frontex fucked up. Now what?
Yeah, but it also says there is no conclusive evidence. Well, we basically know from the reports that, for example, the German show made public, and which you can look into yourself. We'll publish the link.
We'll put the link in the description of the podcast.
Yes. You know, they published a report. Now what? The European Commission's position is still the same. It's not like they magically... It's not like control of Frontex changed in any systematic way.
Also here we like at the podcast itself, here is the point of the podcast where we're like, okay, it's bad. It's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Yeah.
And this is unfortunately the all what we can do as the podcast's goal is to inform people and to let you know what's happening in the world. This is what's happening. You as a European citizen, if you're from Europe, have a responsibility and if you to care about this and have a responsibility to contact however it is, like you can contact the people who make decisions for you. You should contact them. Yes. I know we're not big on this here in the European.
Yes, Americans are way better at this. Yes. But do annoy your MEPs.
Exactly. But not to be American here, but call your senator.
Yes. I mean, yeah, not your senator, but yes.
Yeah. Well, some senators, some...
Are they called senators?
Well, you're European parliamentarians, but also, call the senators and the other representatives you have. Some countries have two.
Do we even have their numbers? Like
they're always public normally in every parliamentary system.
It's so big and so bureaucratic.
Like honestly, this is like it's cute to say, but I really think it's not that obvious for people to call their representative. Like
the least you can do is make a noise about this, and this is how things begin. Make a noise about this. Talk to people about it.
Raise awareness about the existence of Frontex because it's...
Exactly.
Yes, I agree with
it could be soon the military of Europe.
Yes.
Which is honestly such a scary idea because it's happening for a military to exist before any kind of checks and balances in place. It's like you're putting the executive force before the...
Parliamentary, the legislative
and
force.
That is, to me, is crazy. And... It's dangerous.
Yes. I'm like right now I'm looking at like the working groups of the European Parliament, and I can't really find the Frontex committee, but it might be.
Maybe it is already disbanded.
No, I mean like that's it's gonna take too long now to find, but yeah.
But that's what is done to first raise awareness.
First and foremost, yes, raise awareness about this. And then second, maybe consider, because, what it should be. Like converse, debate, discuss. How do you think it could go? Because it's.
I mean,
not,
honestly, if they want, like, as like me doing that now, I think if their budget went from 100 million in the height of the so-called refugee crisis to now, what was it? 400, and they want to up it to
at least $1 billion by
at least
2027.
$1 billion. Like with that money, you can house a shit ton of people and give them clothing and give them food. Like.
You can use money for other things than military power?
No, I just mean like, and then you have people that actually like will listen to you and like be compliant with what you're trying to do as someone who is trying to arrange.
Here's the thing: migration is never going to stop. There is war.
Yeah, exactly.
And as the European Union prides itself on being humanitarian,
the basis of democracy,
basis
the
of-
origin,
basis of human rights. Forget
The
democracy.
source of democracy,
Human
and
rights.
human
People
rights and
literally-
enlightenment, and
If you are literally seeing people drowning and you're not saving them, you're a psychopath, and you should not be holding weapons soon. So
yeah.
let's not buy them weapons. Also, this is your tax money. If you live in Europe, this is your tax money. It's a lot of money. Okay, you should. There is a lot of things that can be done. Like let's say now you're a migrant who lives outside of European Union, and you plan to live in one European country. What can you do? If you're not from the US, if you're not from the within the European Union, you can apply for Belgium. You can apply for a first class worker or something like high skilled worker thing.
Okay, yeah.
That's your first option, which is basically impossible. You need to be like, and the second option is you can get something called the European Blue Card, which is
yes.
if you earn more than 80% of the average national salary. So if you're a rich motherfucker, you
Wait,
get
what?
to come here. And that's it. There is no other quote unquote legal way to do this. What we need to do is change our mentality about people coming to live here. People are going to try to come and live here, and it's not right for us to turn them away. What is it that we lack? Money? Land?
A decent integration system,
Yes.
because everything has been so focused on.
And let's be real
keeping
here
people
too.
out.
Let's not just put the bullshit on the Balkan countries, like because Italy and Greece were abandoned in 2015.
Yeah, no, they were.
And the more fair thing to do is put a system that is pan-European in putting people in the
Yes.
right place. Like do an actual good.
Yeah,
plan.
and also I think it needs to be very clear that if like countries, if you're a part of EU, you can't.
You don't get to say no.
Say no. Indeed, like you of course Belgium doesn't take as many people as Germany because it's a fucking small country, but you do take people like.
and proportional to
Yeah,
the size
proportional.
and budget
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
have.
and of course, if you don't have that much budget, you can get budget.
By the way, the entire Frontex agency has a bigger budget than Moldova.
There you go.
Felt like I needed to point that out as well.
Yeah,
We could
so-
double the budget of Moldova. Like,
Exactly.
The country.
So that's if you're asking like, where would
You
the
mean
money
the
come
GDP
from?
or
Yeah, the GDP.
Where would the money come from? Well, it would come from front. You don't need to buy military drones. You don't need to buy guns. You don't need to go to shady Saudi princes to make weapons deals.
Yeah, you just need to have a good system in place for when they come.
And honestly, like
And suck it up as a fucking Western country,
I can
like-
recognize that it's a hard shift in mentality. If I was living in Italy or Greece and I wasn't there in 2015, I would be like, "What the hell is going on?" I can honestly see some decent people whose ideas and mentality towards immigration have been very soured.
Especially Greece, coming at or still recovering from the economic
Yeah.
crisis they faced, had to suddenly house a shit ton of people,
Yeah.
which they had no infrastructure for, no help. They are still in a debt crisis themselves. Take the south of Italy, always been the black sheep of the
Yes.
of the country, always been ignored. Still,
And the solution isn't to fund a new European military to close the borders with weapons. The solution is to make everybody within the European Union take their own share and take a fair share in solving this crisis, not just pin it on the border countries, and then the border countries are pushed to militarization.
And in
Yeah.
that case, we once again can mourn the loss of Angela Merkel.
Oh.
I mean, she's
Who
not
at least
dead.
had the balls to say, wir schaffen das.
Well, and unfortunately, she did become less and less strong about that statement the longer she was criticized for it.
Yes,
The criticism never stopped.
but I actually don't care necessarily, because in the moment itself, she did it.
It
And
mattered.
It mattered.
afterwards, she can talk people. She can say whatever people want to hear.
But
I
again-
want her to act in the correct way, and she did.
She did, but that's the thing. It's not a one-time thing. Migration,
No,
refugee
yeah,
crises.
we can't rely on a decent politician. You need a
that did
system in
something.
place
That one right thing,
functions.
one right time.
Yeah,
You need a more consistent approach to this. You need to change in mentality of us versus them too. Honestly, just look
But
at the
that
UK
also-
and try to learn from the UK.
yeah.
Like, as in, they
Learn
did a
from
lot
my
of fucked up
mistakes.
shit, and we don't want to go there, right?
Yeah, don't. I mean, ask. There has been like most polls within the UK from all of the people who voted on Brexit are not happy with what's happening.
Of course not.
And I mean, you know what? Like, I am willing to be like, okay, at the time, maybe it seemed like a good idea to make Britain great again, or to gain like some agents take back
Control was the slogan. I
Yeah,
think.
that was the slogan.
But it didn't work, and that's the same thing.
backfired.
Yeah,
I
and
mean-
that's the same with the European Union trying to look at the European countries. It's part of the world, and the world is there. You
Yes.
can't isolate yourself from it.
But it also comes down in that sense to it's not in that sense it's not just the politicians and the EU, like civil
It's the
society.
mentality of the people.
Civil society and even activist groups have also been indoctrinated with the idea of like, oh no, we're not pro open borders, and they constantly say it, and which is and
It's taboo to say that you're pro-immigration.
yeah, or pro open borders, and of course, like you don't have to be idiotic about it and just like throw everything open without any system in
course
place.
not.
But we all have experienced the joy and the usefulness and the beauty of the Schengen area, which is an abolishment of borders.
I mean, I don't know. If you're listening to this podcast, then you know me. If you enjoy my voice, I came here as a refugee. So,
Well,
Only if you enjoy his voice. Though.
Only if you enjoy my
Otherwise,
voice.
like, fuck them refugees. Let them die.
I mean, but like that's the thing.
but like, let's work towards that. Let's work towards a way so we can have more beautiful Keenan voices present
yes.
here.
Exactly.
Let's work towards a happy, joyful place where everybody can move and has the freedom to move around as they want. And if you are part of an organization, you know, be bold, be
Some
brave,
asshole will
take
come
the
be
stand.
like, well, you are so naive. No, you're the naive thinking that closing your borders
yeah.
will make you.
in the
safe
Brexit
in any
versus
way.
EU debate on border control, who has been the naive one?
Exactly.
The British with their sausages.
Oh, the
I find like
sausage
it's
war.
it's really it's kind of sad now to see so many British company owners, etc., that voted for Brexit, thinking that it would give them so many benefits for their company. Now they're not getting the things they need, like supermarkets are
fucking
sometimes
basic trade principles.
Like,
You
out
need
of
people
stock,
to trade
like,
with.
stuff like
The
that.
funny thing is, though, it was the British that historically have always gone around the world and forced other countries to open their markets to them.
Yes.
They pulled up to a place, said, you will trade with us. And if the local people were like, no, we won't, then they just blockaded whatever port they were at, said nothing will get in, then let them starve. And then at the end, the people were like, okay, we will trade with you.
We reached Brexit. That's always gonna be.
It is.
Brexit has been a how long
generalization,
has it been now?
but-
How long has it been?
But I mean, like Brexit, a big reason for Brexit was also them not wanting to take refugees to bring in. Yeah, that was a
No, they wanted
big-
control over
Yes,
migration.
but the UK itself never actually like took a lot of refugees.
No, because they made a deal with like Belgium, so we would stop their refugees as well. Like that whole EU-Turkey
Yeah.
deal, we had an internal one between like the Belgians, the Netherlands, and the French, I believe, and the UK.
Yeah.
Like Calais. That's why Calais became such a giant clusterfuck, because a lot of refugees wanted to go to the UK, and then France and Belgium had to stop them.
Yeah, it was
It
actually
is-
a whole
yeah,
thing.
It's transmigrate.
I'm actually out of the loop
transmigrants,
on
they
that
called
one.
it.
You weren't here yet.
No, I wasn't probably.
It
You were
was
still
a
in Syria.
disaster.
Okay, I'll
They
look
called
into
it,
it.
of course, they called it the jungle of Calais because what else, metaphorically, would they use? But it was basically an uncontrolled and unplanned, refugee camp that started to pop up around
Oh.
that place because people were constantly trying to, break
to the
into
UK.
trucks, get in, climb
There
over
was
fences,
didn't
things like that.
sometime like one
People
time
died in trucks.
People died,
Yeah.
A lot of people died.
But
people
that's
got
also happened on
beaten and
the,
attacked by
like not
police.
just the UK, even from the borders, that you would try to cross the Balkans from Greece using trucks. A lot of people would die that way. Lots of black market mafia shit. Lots of smugglers making money. Lots of human trafficking. Lots of kidney selling.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Okay. So I think this was our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it to some extent, as much as you can enjoy talking about human trafficking and
Next time you're on the
human rights
toilet, tell the person standing next to you or sitting next to you, do you know about Frontex?
Okay, you do that, Tom. The rest of us will do it at the table as normal civilized people do.
Boring.
Just pass a note under the toilet stool.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't have that in your. Thank God.
Yeah, no,
No,
it
it's not
doesn't
like the
work.
Americans.
What?
You know the American toilet stools, like the stalls, like you have a lot of space.
Where it basically comes
between the
up to your
floor.
knees,
Yeah.
like the gap
Ooh.
underneath.
There is
the-
no privacy.
No, it's
Interesting.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So enough talk about toilets. So we hope we see you next week. And yeah, talk about this. Explore the topic yourself. Look at the links that we will post in the description. They're very interesting. And
The German video has subtitles.
Yes.
exactly
You
English
can watch the German
subtitles.
video. It's actually kind of funny.
kind of funny. Yes. So see you next week. And
See you.
like, share, subscribe,
Subscribe.
and don't be afraid to give us some feedback.